Inspired by Nas Daily's video about South Korea, unlike the last video, I decided to make a video about South Korea myself, and upon research and prior knowledge, their country is definitely depressing. Nas Daily's video boils down to this argument that South Korea has such visible unrest that a foreigner can join their protests, and yet, he tried to warp this narrative to prove his cognitive bias, since, like an unprofessional journalist, entered the country with the goal to prove it wasn't depressing. As always, this video is meant to encourage intellectual criticism, and I will surely butcher Korean words I don't know, so apologies in advance. With a northern neighbor that upholds an ideology so disliked among the capitalist-dominant international community, it is obvious to see why many actions in the South are often overlooked and neglected. Bring up any criticism of the South, and you're bound to hear people mention the North as worse, as if to excuse Southern criticism. In other parts of the internet, like on Nas Daily's channel, many try to pose South as a capitalistic utopia. The reality is far from the truth. I've referenced this interview video before, but in what is called Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang in Seoul, the interviewee traveled to South Korea, and one of the people they met was Kyung-Ook, an attorney who has extensive experience with the South Korean intelligence. One of the only sources against North Korea comes from defectors, people that claim to have escaped from North Korea, usually fleeing to the South for shelter and safety. The attorney walked the interviewer on how South Korean intelligence turns defectors into political tools and spies, which are then used to spread fear among the South Korean population to continue hating the North. I'll quote the relevant bits of this interview, with the full video and description as always. When defectors arrive in South Korea, the government decides whether or not to accept them. This is all conducted through investigations in the NIS Defector Holding Center. When you're being investigated, you're alone during the day, but during the rest of the day the defectors are held in cells with one other person. Before, all defectors were held in solitary confinement, minimum held for 1 week, maximum held for 6 months. If anyone is held for more than 3 months, they've already been made into a spy. When you're put into solitary confinement for that long, month after month after month, you go crazy. You'll do whatever the agents tell you to do. The defectors are held in what looks like a secret facility. Its location is hidden in the mountains. This is how this facility became a spy factory. The defectors only spent time with the investigating agents, who verbally abuse the prisoners and make threats. Defectors are put through this inhumane investigative process. After this process, the defectors attend a settlement school. When you go to the library there, you can only see books criticizing the North Korean leaders. Every movie or television shown teach the direct opposite of what the defectors have been taught. You can see this as cultural genocide. They make the defectors say anything about North Korea. The existence of defectors to the South Korean government is used to destroy North Korea as a political tool. Therefore, the South Korean government acts as if they welcome defectors to stage it like they ran away to find freedom. The attorney then asks, "Do you know how many defectors lie and give fake intelligence to be used as a political tool? Defectors are used for anti-North activism. Defectors are used to gather human intelligence, then again, as spies." But you still might be wondering, are these defectors still running away from something? Are they coming to the South for safety and shelter? Not most of the time. For instance, there was an announcement on various news sites like that of CNN in 2016, where 13 North Koreans defected to South Korea, supposedly on their own merit. However, the owner of a South Korean restaurant who claimed to aid these defectors later revealed that he was bribed by the South Korean government intelligence to kidnap these North Koreans and trick them into defecting. Despite this reveal, the NIS has still not returned these girls back to their families in North Korea. The aforementioned interviewer also made discoveries on who supports these defectors. He has done a phenomenal job in such investigative journalism to shed light on this entire political operation.
The famous defectors that we're used to, the ones that announce to the world of the infringements of human rights in North Korea, probably look something like this. This defector is named Park Yeon-mi. Ever since a video of her crying at a conference went viral, she's been dominating the defector narrative in the media. There are many other defectors like her who get huge international attention. But how are they making themselves so popular? Who's supporting them? Let's use Park Yeon-mi as an example. In South Korea, she is sponsored by a right-wing think tank called the Freedom Factory Corporation. And in the United States, she is funded by the Atlas Network, a massive libertarian organization that creates and supports right-wing think tanks from all across the world. The Atlas Network has been playing an especially active role in the destabilization in Venezuela. The Atlas Network funds think tanks in Venezuela like Sedisa Freedom, which is an anti-government organization with the purpose to change public opinion and to support the opposition protests. An opposition leader in Venezuela named Maria Machado, who's been actively calling for regime change, even thanked the Atlas Network on camera for its support. And in Korea, the Atlas Network has been quietly playing its role by funding organizations that pay defectors to tell harrowing tales of their home country. One of the organizations that the Atlas Network funds is called Teach North Korean Refugees, yet another platform for terrifying defector testimonies. The founder of this organization, Casey Lartigue, is also one of the directors of the Freedom Factory Corporation that was mentioned earlier. This is because Casey Lartigue is a paid partner of the Atlas Network. It isn't a coincidence that this massive yet secretive organization that meddles in Latin American politics also happens to play a major role in defector politics in Korea. It is because defector testimonies can change people's opinions and therefore can be used as a political tool. And what is even more alarming is that this chain of money flowing down to these defectors goes even higher up. Investigative journalist Lee Fang uncovered donations to the Atlas Network from Koch brothers, ExxonMobil, MasterCard, and more. And from the taxpayer's dollar, the US State Department and the National Endowment of Democracy publicly funds the Atlas Network. Currently in South Korea, defectors are paid almost $1 million for their testimonies, with more cash for more dramatic stories.
South Korea also has the National Security Act, which is something that attorney Kyung-Ook tries to help people fight. He says, and I quote, "I've been fighting federal cases charged under the National Security Act and other similar laws. There are many people charged with the crime during protests and demonstrations," end of quote. Nas Daily, in his video, likes to boast that South Korea has peaceful protests, but when you can be criminalized for simply protesting at all, I can see why. Change is effectively hindered in South Korea. The National Security Act that the attorney mentions, established in 1948, was the legalization that allowed killing anyone who spoke against the American occupation in Korea, or the right-wing government it propped up. With this act, the South Korean government was allowed to harm and arrest anyone that challenged it or spoke against it, and label them as communists, regardless if they actually were or not. The law still exists to this day in South Korea, which its government uses to deflect and discourage any statements, acts, or organizations that are either pro-North Korea or pro-unification, which is seeking to unify the North and South together. Now, this is all depressing for those who support North Korea and for those who want the country to unify, as well as defectors who don't want to be made into wealthy political assets. But what about the rest of the nation? According to TFI Daily and written by Anna Fifield, a former Beijing bureau chief for Washington Post, who focused on issues in South Korea, don't be fooled by the bright lights, the zingy K-pop music, the ubiquitous technology. South Korea is, in the minds of the many young people here, a living hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. It's a place where, according to a growing number, born with a golden spoon in their mouths to get into the best universities and secure the plum jobs, while those born with a dirt spoon work long hours in low-paying jobs without benefits. End of quote. She isn't wrong when saying that they aren't going to take it anymore, for South Korea has the highest suicide rate for females and the third highest suicide rate for males in accordance to the OECD and BMC Public Health. Since 2005, this increased by 244% for men and 282% for women. The TFI article goes on to say that South Korea has a common nickname, Hell Joseon, which is a reference to the Joseon dynasty, which had a feudal system where people's place in life was dictated. They managed to get the quote from Hwang Min-ju, who says, "It's hard to imagine myself getting married and having kids. There is no answer or future for us." According to a 22-year-old named Lee Ga-hayon, in South Korea, a part-time means working full-time hours at the minimum wage. The rent on her shoebox-sized room costs almost half of her monthly earnings of only $450 US. According to the Korea Labor Institute's figures, economic growth slowed to 2.6% as of last year. This leads to irregular jobs with no security or benefits. Almost 2/3 of young people who got jobs last year became irregular workers. Additionally, 14-hour days are a norm for South Koreans. Corporations like Samsung, Hyundai, and Doosan are laying off workers and calling for early retirement. South Korea also is having a major problem with food. They are becoming ever reliant on food imports, in contrast to North Korea's nearly complete self-reliance and self-sustainability. South Korea has ever increasingly been removing farmland and forests alike to replace them with urban development. In response to this massive food demand, they've started taking land and imports at the expense of other people. For instance, it was planned by Daewoo to lease 1.3 million acres of land for 99 years in Madagascar. Roughly half of their land, including arable land and forests, were used for South Korea as palm and corn monocultures. As the TheKoreaTimes puts it, producing food for export from a country where a third of the population and 50% of children under 5 are malnourished, using workers imported from South Africa instead of locals. Those living on the land were never consulted or informed, despite being dependent on the land for food and income. End of quote. Is this really where we want to see North Korea to go? According to Nas Daily, they definitely hope North Korea follows South Korea's model. As a result of South Korea's deal with the country, anti-government protests arose and hundreds of people died. This violent ordeal led to the removal of President Mark, who was succeeded by Andry Rajoelina, who immediately revoked this deal with South Korea. This didn't stop South Korea, however, from having 218,000 hectares of appropriated land. South Korea looks to do the same in other parts of Africa, Siberia, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, Mongolia, an investment of 30 billion won in land in Paraguay and Uruguay, not to mention discussions with Laos, Myanmar, and Senegal. By purchasing or leasing land instead of the labor or imports, entire local communities are neglected in the process, which is called imperialism. But wait, it gets so much worse. As of 2015, it's been known that South Korean islands have been used as slave camps where families send mentally disabled relatives to salt farms in order to avoid responsibilities, and it's been this way for a long time. After officials searched more than 38,000 salt, fish, and agricultural farms and disabled facilities, over 100 workers were found who received little to no pay for their work and were reported missing by their families. Despite these investigations, no changes happened on the islands despite the national outcry. Courts consider such forced labor as tolerable common practices, and many perpetrators of these crimes have prison sentences that were suspended. The icing on this depressing cake is that many rescued disabled people from such slavery return to the salt farms because, as is common for them to say, even the salt farms are better than life on the streets or in crowded shelters. Activists believe that many slaves are yet to be discovered. As Daily Mail says, some salt farm owners sent victims away or hid them from investigators. They say others coached disabled workers about what they should say in interviews. Protests do exist against these activities, but obviously it is not enough, nor is holding candles and shouting enough. Not only are the younger generations of South Korea and the disabled of South Korea having harder times, but so are the elderly. Elsie Hu, a writer for NPR.org, wrote an article covering this. South Korea has the worst senior poverty rate among developed nations, and the options for seniors are slim. It is discovered that seniors wait in long lines for small handouts of juice boxes, pieces of fruit, and around 50 US cents worth of money. Some hate on communist countries for breadlines, and yet here it is, something worse in a country considered to be a capitalist utopia. It is common for the elderly to self-isolate in their homes, which are often tiny. According to the OECD, short working lives contribute to a high elderly poverty rate. Some throw back to the Confucian encouragement of children supporting their parents, but Koo Win-ho, a Seoul National University professor who researches poverty issues, states that it's not a realistic solution only to rely on children to support their elderly parents. South Korea only provides a basic pension to retirees, which amount to only a quarter of the desired minimum amount needed for single households. This is according to the National Pension Research Institute survey. Even with this, Only 35% of seniors even get such a pension. If one statistically believed that the seniors don't even matter because they are soon to die, the problem doesn't fix itself, as according to the Wall Street Journal, the birth rate is only continuing to fall. The South Korean census numbers show seniors grew from 7% to 12% from the year 2000 up to 2013. Nas Daily is also wrong that South Korea is a shining beacon for peaceful protests. Around November 14, 2015, 60,000 people protested. Many fought police forces at the front lines, trying to break through barricades of police buses blocking off downtown Seoul. Police responded by gouging them with water cannons, irritating their eyes and skin with chili pepper. Who are these protesters? Unsurprisingly, labor and activist groups, including the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. Union workers have been protesting since South Korea adopted capitalism in the late 1980s. Hundreds of thousands protested the American presence as well. Most renowned by the rest of the world is K-pop. Is this industry innocent and free of the depression that is with South Korea? Unfortunately, no. And Cuck Philosophy has a good video on this already that I will link in the description, but here is a taste of the horror in such an industry.
Seo-hyun, also a member of Girls' Generation, was only 11 when she auditioned. When asked to sing a song, the first song that came to her head was a nursery rhyme. This shows just how young a lot of trainees are when they begin their career. At this point, they might not realize the full implications of what they're signing up for. The fact that they are sacrificing their leisure time, their ability to have long-term friends, social media, in some cases their health and self-esteem, their childhoods are robbed from them and given up entirely to shape them into tools of the company, sculpting every aspect of their being. Their childhoods are robbed from them and given up entirely to shape them into tools of the company, sculpting every aspect of their being, not just their singing and dancing capabilities, but their appearance, behavior, outward personality, and life schedule. The fact that Taeyeon wouldn't want to wish her own life upon her children as a famous and admired idol which she worked for almost her entire childhood and teenage years is telling. Trainees, being in danger of being dropped by the company at any time, must adopt a competitive attitude and can never be certain of the future of their friendships. The company has no regard for the emotional traumas it causes, for the family-like dependencies it creates only to break them, for the terrible mental health that a lot of its trainees have to endure. Once the contract is signed, the trainee has no say in any decision-making process. After the creation of this highly effective in-house system, another problem rose up: piracy. As it became increasingly common to illegally download music for free, the next development for managerial companies was to connect their idols with commercial products and saturate the media. In addition to already being singers, dancers, actors, and TV personalities, K-pop idols now became advertisers, appearing in commercials for everything from water purifiers to fried chicken. Conversely, K-pop music videos themselves became advertisements for external products. Even more than before, the importance of appearance rose above that of reality. Because of this, K-pop ended up influencing not just pop music, but advertisements, consumer products, movies, TV shows, fashion, and all of these things would end up influencing K-pop in turn. This feedback loop created an entire culture that was mainly run by just 3 managerial companies. As Hannah Wade says, with a firm hold on the Korean domestic music economy, these 3 companies are able to manufacture culture in Korea, defining what the masses deem to be popular, and as a result, what they spend their money on. They create their products, Korean idol stars, in accordance to what their consumers want, but in turn are able to define exactly what the end product will be, thus manipulating what the consumers want into what they have already created.
You may believe in the many defectors who come from North Korea where the reverse is true. This leads me to warrant that South Korea is a dystopian nightmare. Its renowned technologies, bright lights, and large cities, and infestation of consumerism are very reminiscent of the dystopian books and cyberpunk genres that warned us of such monstrosities ages ago. But not the cool kind.